Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Thomas Edwards, business and life coach, speaker, author of The One Up Effect. Over 17 years, he has helped high achieving entrepreneurs stop winning at the wrong game and start building lives that actually feel good as they look. And so we'll explore with him the four pillars of purpose, play, passion, and performance, why successful people self sabotage, and the first move to make when you are successful on paper but quietly miserable. Welcome to the show, Thomas.
Hey, thanks so much for having me here, man.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show, Thomas. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about how one gets into this whole winning the wrong game thing, and that needs to how you help them correct that. So we'll talk about all this, but before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, Thomas, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Yes, of course. I've been a coach for over 17 years. And at the height of my first coaching practice, which was helping people find love, I was known as the professional wingman. And I was being flown around the world. I was responsible for over 400 marriages and engagements. I mean, I was, by all measures and metrics, I was living the life, right? Living the dream. And I felt really empty when I realized that I had accomplished so much. And that emptiness that I couldn't describe threw me for a loop. And I fell into substance abuse and nearly lost everything, including my life. And, by the grace of God, I was able to recover from that. And in that pursuit of figuring out what my life was going to look like, I came across my first true love, which was video games. And I actually went to school for video games not long ago. And I realized if I were to combine my coaching experience and philosophy with game design and my academic knowledge around it, perhaps I could create an experience that could allow me to live life like it was a game and have fun and not just focus on just the winning, right? And being able to have fun. And so since then, I've been able to coach hundreds of people using this philosophy to help them grow their business while also still being present for the people that they love the most.
Absolutely, Thomas. Absolutely. So I want to understand for the audience what is it that you are trying to tell them with what you are saying, with what you are doing.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I learned in retrospect when I felt that emptiness at the height of my success in my early 20s was I was playing a game that someone else wanted me to play. And that game for you could be maybe your parents, it could be the media, it could be your friends, it could be society. But for me, I was told to play a certain game, which was for me, go to school, get an education, get a job, make a lot of money, and then you can have fun. And so I did that, but then I didn't really feel like I was truly winning. So my message to you is if you feel like you've been crushing it and totally winning at whatever game you're playing, but you're feeling this sense of emptiness or unhappy or unfulfilled, chances are you're playing the wrong game. And I invite you to do what I did, which was change the game. Design a game that is designed specifically for you to play, to have fun, and win.
Absolutely. So two things here, Thomas. One is that someone else wanted me to play. Others, I was playing the game that someone else wanted me to play. I
Yeah.
understand people, either parents, society, everything else around us, create that sort of a thing. But how do I, as an individual, when I'm growing, when I'm young, when I'm still trying to understand the world,
Yeah.
how do I get the right kind of guidance? How do I differentiate between that guidance and game that somebody else wants me to play? Because somewhere some guidance is required. A child needs
Absolutely.
guidance to walk. Now, if the child starts, questioning that you are not letting me walk the way I would want to walk in the future, the child will never learn walking. I want to
Yeah.
understand how is it the best way to seek that right kind of path from wherever we get started.
It's such a great question. And I get that asked a lot. And so I talk about the concept of infinite and finite games. James Carse is another author. He actually talks about this a lot. And what that means is there are many games that we play in our life, whether we believe that they're the games or not, but we do. And games that are finite, they are basically games that have the boundaries around them, which you can only play, right? You can play, you can master them, but that's all you can do, right? The rules, the objectives, they're always the same. An example of a finite game is employment. If you are working for someone, you might have an ability to get promoted, but at some point you will hit a ceiling, and that's a finite game. What I encourage people who are younger is to learn the finite games that are being presented to you by your friends, by society, by school, by education, by the media. Learn what those games are and why are they wanting you to play those games, and then play them and get really good at them so that you can then become able to play what's known as infinite games, where you're not just playing inside the boundaries, you get to play with the boundaries. You get to push them and stretch them and sometimes even break those boundaries in order for you to reach another level of what playing a game looks like for you. And so, I don't want you to just go out there and ignore everything, because I have a 9-year-old, and we do encourage her to question things, even us as parents. However, there are still games within that you must play that are finite, aka obey your parents. But we do that for the purpose of helping you master that game, so that way when you go out into the world, you can see that game and then learn how to play an infinite game that does not have restrictions, that do not have all the boundaries that were there, and allow you to play at a higher level.
Absolutely, absolutely, Thomas. Now let's look at the games to choose from when we grow up. And you talked about, that if you are not getting the type of feeling in that particular game, then choose the game that you want. How do I know whether the game I am playing, whether that game is not for me or I am not made for that game? How do
Mm.
I do analysis of the game? How do I do self introspection and know what fits best for me? Sometimes we don't want to do enough, hard work on anything, and then they think this is not made for me. Something else is suited better. How do you want, anything in life you cannot get without hard work. You need very hard work for that.
I
And then
agree.
you love it so much more. At one point in time, you were thinking of quitting it.
I 100% agree. I mean, hard work, as defined as you putting in effort beyond what you think you're capable of, is the key that allows you to become a greater version of yourself. In other words, if you want to become a better person who becomes qualified to achieve greater things, hard work is necessary. It is an unavoidable path, right? However, to answer your question, right, like how do you know if you're playing the right game? Well, there's a concept that's called flow, and I think if I pronounce his name correctly, I think it's Shinsen Mihaly. Well, he talks about the concept of flow, and the way I interpret it is when you're in a state of flow, you are just in your zone of just greatness. You almost lose consciousness around time and other things because you're so focused and dialed in what you're doing. And I talk about in my book, The One Up Effect, how you can actually create that state on demand. And the way that I've discovered how to do that is you want to find something that is just enough challenging for you, but also allows you to leverage your skill sets, right? And so if you have good skill sets and you have the right enough challenge, that becomes the intersection where you can hit a state of flow. Now, if you want to play a slightly more challenging game that will cause you to think about new ways of growth, becoming a better version of yourself, then you want that challenge to be just high enough that the skill sets that you have are not enough for you to overcome the challenge. Meaning, you're going to have to acquire a new skill set or an upgraded version of your current skill set in order to overcome the challenge. This is what makes these games so much fun, right? Because at some point, you're going to be like, if you're playing a video game, you're going to be faced with, let's say, a boss, right? A boss of that level. And you can't go to the next level until you face this boss. Well, this boss represents a reflection of how skilled you are up to that point in the game. And that boss is designed to be challenging. It's designed to make sure that you actually know your stuff and you can actually defeat this boss. And if you can't, that tells you that you need to upgrade something or acquire a new skill in order to overcome the boss. And so, you can't avoid the bosses. I always tell people, if you're playing a game and you're going in a direction where you're not faced with challenge, you're going in the wrong direction. You want to be going in the direction towards challenge, towards resistance, so that way you can figure out what you need to upgrade or acquire in order to overcome that challenge. And so I find that to be a really good idea, good way to kind of gauge if you're playing the right game. And then on top of all of this, if you are enjoying this process, if there's some part of you, even if you feel on one hand miserable, but on another hand, you feel also like this is deeply fulfilling, that it makes you happy, that's a good sign that you're playing the right game, right? Like, I'll give you a very simple example and then we can move to the next topic. But when you go to exercise, or if you go to the gym to work out, or you do any type of exercise, like, the experience itself is not necessarily fun, right? But if you enjoy the process of getting stronger, even though the experience itself is slightly miserable because you need to break down your muscles and push and pull heavy weights in order to do that, like, that is a game worth playing. And that's when you're playing the right game.
Absolutely, absolutely. You talk about success, you talk about happiness, you talk about fulfillment. If these were, are these all required for us to, look at ourselves in the right frame of things? Which comes first? If at all are required, which comes first? Which comes last? How does these work in our life? Because you have been through everything, seeing also at the end of life, as you say, from close, and then, redeeming yourself from that. You must be knowing the answer, I'm sure.
Well, so are we asking between success, fulfillment, and then what's the third one?
Happiness.
Happiness. That's great. That's so great. All right. And so sometimes you can be, I think happiness, I would say, surprisingly, happiness is in the middle. I think we value success so much that we think that is number one. But really, success is only a metric to determine if you're going in the right direction and are you actually successfully moving in the right direction, right? But like, if you were to remove that from the equation, just temporarily, I think fulfillment is something that we all seek even through success. And fulfillment is really designed as like you're being filled internally until you feel full, right? And when someone feels full internally, emotionally, spiritually, right? Even after a good meal, right? A healthy meal, right? Like, you feel this sense of gratitude and sometimes satisfaction, right? But I think that's what we're aspiring to first. We want to enjoy the process, but we also understand that, like, that's not always going to be the case 100% of the time, right? I just talked about how sometimes during the process you might feel miserable, right? And so happiness is not required. It's just something that would be nice, right? But I think when we're happier in what we're doing and we're experiencing more joy, we tend to perform. Studies have shown that we perform at a higher level because of that happiness. So I would be remiss as the author of this book if I didn't say that happiness, didn't play a role. So I would actually stack fulfillment number one, happiness number two, and then success and achievement number 3. Because I've noticed and I've met people who, they have achieved a lot, but they were very unhappy. They were able to do a lot in the world, but it didn't pique their fulfillment. And they would tell me, like, I wish I did more to fill my cup. I wish I did more things or had better experiences or spent more time with my family to have those moments that would bring me joy. And so through that understanding, that's why I would rank it that way. I think achievement becomes a byproduct of how fulfilled and how happy you go through life.
Absolutely, absolutely, Thomas. So you have been through life and understood it differently, understood it your way. How would you rate yourself? Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? How are you successful? How do you see yourself at what stage?
When I look back at, who I was in my early 20s and I compare myself to where I'm at today, I would say that my fulfillment, my happiness, and my achievements are at such a significant higher level than where I was in my 20s. And truth be told, like in my 20s, I was making so much more money than I am currently, right? And I think that's really funny because I thought, and it shows you like why the game that I was playing in my 20s was destined for me to lose. Because money, at least that level of money and my aspirations towards acquiring that much amount of money didn't have that deeper fulfillment and joy that I was told it would bring. Whereas today, like I have a healthier body. I have great connections and relationships with my family. I have a great community of friends. There's a lot of activities and hobbies that I enjoy. And I serve clients all around the world. And I'm able to help them transform their businesses and their lives. And I go to sleep, so oftentimes tired, but deeply fulfilled because I know I'm doing like the work that I'm here to do. And so that last piece, I think for me, sets it apart from where I was in my 20s. And so to answer your question, like, yeah, I feel like my fulfillment is at a very high level. My happiness is a very high level. And my achievement, when I compare it to before, it's more than money, right? Like what I'm not making in terms of the amount that I was making in my 20s is overcompensated for the work that I get to do and the people who I get to work with, like the quality of the people I get to work with. I mean, no offense to those people, I love them, but it's the impact and the quality of the impact is on a whole nother level. So it's hard for me to compare, but I would say for sure, like I'm living my version of the dream for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me ask it and understand it this way for the audience. How about identity? Does fulfillment create your identity, or identity creates fulfillment for many?
Interesting. Great question. I would say that identity it influences fulfillment. And we could talk about it from the lens of the concept of imposter syndrome, right? We often hear imposter syndrome is feeling like a fraud, right? A lot of people who are successful, they'll talk about how imposter syndrome affects them. They don't believe that they're deserving of the success. And sometimes imposter syndrome can take over so much that it can sabotage your success. Well, I actually don't agree that imposter syndrome is feeling like a fraud. I actually think that imposter syndrome is nothing more than a confusion of your identity, right? Like your success makes it very clear who you are. Because if you were not that type of person, you wouldn't be qualified to achieve those things. But your brain and maybe your heart have not caught up to that identity, right? Your brain is trying to convince you that you are not what you've done, that you are not the person who's been able to achieve those things. And that's just not true. So what your brain will do is it'll trick you. It'll confuse you into thinking you're not that person who just achieved that thing when the data specifically tells you that you are, right? And so what we have to do is we have to move through that confusion and own the fact that we achieved that thing And thus our identity has allowed us to become qualified to achieve that thing. And when we see that, it gives us this understanding that we can actually basically control our identity. How we choose to identify ourselves becomes the thing that now enables us and gives us power and strength and courage to pursue the things that we want. And I think through that, that's when we can experience fulfillment. Because if you believe that you are someone that is worthy and capable of achieving greatness, then your journey to getting there and actually achieving it, that is what's going to create the fulfillment.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is so much to learn about all this from you, Thomas. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you, learn from your book, The One Up Effect, and much more. What's the best way for them to do so?
Well, my book will be coming out June 2nd. And so just a few weeks. And so you can go and pre-order a copy at theoneupeffect.com. If you want to learn more about me, my story, or figure out ways that we can connect with your business or in your personal life, you can go to thomasedwardsjr.com.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.